Welcome to the last parent session for the Summer Academic Orientation Program. My name is Jennifer Caron, and I'm one of the career counselors here with the Student Success Center. So the large unit that hosts today, and the large unit at Western where our career services is located. So today's presentation, Return on Investment, helping your child prepare for a career after graduation. I thought that you might be wondering, coming here today, why a career workshop for parents? And maybe you get a little bit out of the title about how it might benefit you to be here today. But I thought I would start off with sharing with you the main reasons we decided to have a career workshop for parents. Now, I see a couple students in the audience, and that's great. There's some really good information that I hope you can take away from today. But know that career services are available for students with their time here at Western and after graduation. Okay, so let's start off with money. Education is really expensive, and for the most part, I know that a lot of today's parents are responsible for footing the bill. It's a lot of money to put out, and oftentimes when we're investing a lot of money into something, we get a tangible outcome. Well, when you're investing your money in university, it doesn't always feel like you're going to get such a tangible outcome or result. And so a career often represents that return on investment. And I would guess that a lot of the parents here today are hopeful that once their children graduate, they will find a career and get onto their 2 feet. I know personally my parents only recently finished paying off the loans that they took out for my sister and I to go to university. So it's a large burden on parents today to put their kids through. We know as an institution, and this is something that we've recognized more recently, parents are a student's #1 point of contact. So they're going to you before anybody else. They're having those career conversations with you first. They're asking you those questions and going to you for your advice and words of wisdom before they're using the resources available to them here at Western. Now, as an institution, one thing we have recognized is that sometimes to get to our students, we need to get to the parents first. And so that's another reason we have this here today. Students typically base their career decisions on what they know. So the jobs that you have, the jobs that your family members have, friends of the family, and jobs that we interact with and encounter on a day-to-day basis. And that gives us a very narrow view of all the job possibilities. Students also often base their career decisions on what their parents tell them they should do. I meet with students year-round. In a given year, I could meet with through individual appointments or workshops anywhere between 500 to 1,000 students. And a common thing they say is, well, my mom or dad says I should be A, or my mom wants me to be A, or my dad wants me to be A. One of the last reasons that we have this career workshop for parents is because 80% of students change their educational path sometime throughout their stay at university. And this isn't unique to Western. This is consistent across universities in Canada. But what that means is that the path your children are setting today at SAO, 80% of them will make some type of change. And often that's because a change of interest, or because of a challenge in meeting the requirements. And these conversations, before these changes happen, students are often having those conversations with their parents before they make a change. I can tell you from some personal experience, my parents were actually up in London last night visiting, seeing my house here. And I was telling them about this presentation and that I use them often for stories as when I speak to you. And when I came to university in 2002, I entered into the ACS program, which is now called BMOS, the Bachelor of Management and Organizational Studies. The reasons I decided to come to Western and go into that program were because in high school, my strongest subjects were math and economics. My dad's in the military and does accounting and finance, so he was kind of my role model for what you could do being good at math. So based on those two main things, I decided to come to Western and pursue a career as an accountant. So that was my initial goal. That's what my plan was when I came to SAO back then. And I got to Western, did well in first year, second year, third year, and then these two things happened to me. I quickly realized that I wasn't actually interested in my accounting courses, and that being said, I was having a really hard time meeting the requirements of that module I was in. For the first time in my life, I was getting 60s in my courses. Not because I didn't have the academic ability, I just was not enjoying my courses at all. And through conversation with my parents, decided that I would switch programs. They weren't very, very happy with my decision, but they let me do what I needed to do. I switched programs into psychology because I had taken a psychology course as an elective and absolutely loved it. So I switched into psychology, ended up taking a 5th year, ended up graduating with a 5-year degree and doing an honors specialization in psychology. Got my marks way back up into the 80s and 90s, and then was admitted to a limited enrollment master's program right out of my undergrad to do a 2-year master's. Now I'm working in my 3rd year here at Western as a career counselor. So that's a little bit about my story here at Western, and I'm going to introduce you to some successful Western alumni and share with you some of their stories as well. Because career planning and just your child experience at university will not be linear. They will not necessarily come here today with a plan, go through university following that plan, and then at the end graduate and find a career that directly relates to what they thought they maybe wanted to do today. And that's okay. There are some people that's their path, but I would say that's more of the exception than the rule. So let's begin. I'm going to show you a video. It's about 10 minutes long, and you'll meet a handful of alumni, and I just ask you to listen to their stories and see if you can pick up some of the themes that present. Okay, so we're going to come back to that video and talk about some of the different themes that were presented as we move through the presentation over the next 40 minutes. So I'm going to share with you some basic stats about the labor market and the economy in which your children are going to be graduating into. And then we'll talk a little bit about career planning and how as parents you can support your children in that decision making and throughout that process. I'm not going to teach anybody here how to plan for a career, but hopefully share with you some of the information that you can take away and pass along to your children. We'll then look at some of the services offered by the Student Success Center, and then we're going to hear again from that same group of alumni, and they have some advice that they'd like to share with you. Okay, so to introduce you to the statistics and this idea of the new economy that we live in today and that your children will be graduating into, I wanted to have a little bit of a test or a quiz, and I thought you came all the way to Western that we couldn't let you leave without some type of test. So you can shout out the answer, but I need you to help me identify some occupations. So we're starting with this one. Can anyone tell me who this is or what this gentleman is? A baker, close?
Milling flour.
Yeah, milling flour. It's a miller. Excellent. Okay, this lady? Switchboard operator, yep. Okay, this gentleman?
Shoemaker.
Cobbler, yep, shoemaker, excellent. You guys are doing well, okay? Yeah, elevator operator. Okay. Milkman, pretty straightforward, this one. Blacksmith, yeah, I heard it over there. Great. And last but not least, Cooper, excellent. Barrel maker or a Cooper. Okay, so why do I show you all of these occupations? What do they have in common? Yeah, they're obsolete. They no longer exist. At least from the perspective of Statistics Canada, these jobs are no longer represented on the books. There are some exceptions. We do actually have an elevator operator at Lens Mills downtown, Kings Mills downtown London. But like I said, from the perspective of Statistics Canada, these jobs no longer exist. And at their time, they used to be very popular occupations. So what would be some of the main reasons that these jobs no longer exist? Technology. Yeah, that's one of the major ones. Technology and living in a global economy. Jobs that used to be here in Canada have been moved to other countries where the job can be done more efficiently or more cost effectively. So technology and living in a global economy are two of the main reasons that these jobs no longer exist. Okay, so it used to be that going to university in itself was an acceptable career planning strategy. You go to university, and at the end, you're likely to get a job without much direction. It's not really the case anymore. Just going to university in itself isn't going to guarantee that you get a job and that your children are successful in finding employment after they graduate. So let's look at some of the main changes and some of the major things that have happened. Well, just the landscape of the types of jobs in Canada has changed. So now 75% of all Canadians work in the service industries. A big shift from we used to have a predominantly manufacturing-based industry. Job titles are no longer stable or predictive of the type of work that we might be doing. We really rely on skill sets today. I bet if I ask anybody in the room what their job title is, it probably wouldn't tell me what you actually do on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure if you have the same job title today as you had 5, 10, 15 years ago, you're probably doing your work or your job in a different way, or even doing a different job. So job titles are almost an afterthought today. We really are looking to skill sets. Job security has moved to this idea of employability. So what that means is that your children aren't necessarily going to be staying with the same organization or employer for their entire career. That they'll move and shift as the economy and job market changes. And it's this idea of employability where we shift based on our skill sets. And it doesn't mean that there isn't job security, it just means that there's more variety and variability. We talked about before, living in a global economy today. Job performance is what's really going to propel your children throughout their career, not seniority. And the way in which we do work on teams and working with people based on working in the service industry. So the bottom line is it's going to take a lot more than just having a university degree for your son or daughter to be successful in today's economy. Now, sometimes people say, well, is a degree just useless then? And, well, the answer is no, it's not useless. It's almost becoming a priority for so many of the jobs out there. It's almost the minimum criteria to access all of the jobs that exist. So, the Canadian economy, let's look at some stats. There are over 2 million job titles in Canada. Now, if you remember that first slide I showed you, I said that students typically base their career decisions on what they know. Well, there's lots of options out there, and I bet they don't even know a fraction of the 2 million job titles. And of those 2 million job titles, Statistics Canada organizes those into 300,000 general occupations, 20 of which are regulated. And what they mean by regulated is that for only 20% of jobs is there actually a specific path to entry. So we know that to be a physician in Canada, you have to go to medical school, be part of the Ontario College of Physicians, so on and so forth. To be a licensed plumber, electrician, there's a specific path to entry. But for 80% of the jobs out there, for the majority of the jobs, there isn't a specific path to entry. The hidden job market. Has anybody heard of this term before? Some, maybe a few nods. Okay, the hidden job market, it's any job search literature you pick up today, you'll find this, the hidden job market. And essentially what it means is it represents where all the jobs are. And we know that about 20% of jobs, when I say only 20% of jobs are ever posted, whether it's online or through print resources. So that's a very small portion of all the jobs that are filled. And there's many, many reasons. I mean, we could do a full presentation on the hidden job market and how to find a job. But that's not the purpose of today. The purpose of today is just to provide you with that information so that you can help your children when they're in their job search and recognize that sitting behind a computer and just looking for job postings is going to find them about 20% of the jobs. It takes today a lot more effort on the part of the individual, on the part of the graduate, to find employment beyond sitting behind their computer. And from an employer's perspective, hiring, well, it's really expensive, and it is kind of like gambling. It's a risk you take with every new hire. So there's a reason, and I'm sure we could come up with a million of them, reasons that they don't have to post every single job. I'm sure each and every person in this room can think of someone they know that got a job because they knew someone or because they had contacted an employer or done numerous other things. So how have new graduates found work then? Well, these are some of the main ways. And this is from the National Graduate Survey. It's a survey conducted by Statistics Canada in conjunction with colleges and universities across Canada. And we see here answered an internet job ad about 22.8%. So that corresponds fairly well with the 20% I showed you on the last slide. The majority of graduates are finding work through networking means. And I haven't put them all up here, but some of the main ones through referrals, contacting employers directly, being contacted by an employer directly, networking at a job fair, and so on and so forth. At Western, we bring hundreds of employers onto campus every year to meet new graduates and students and to do recruitment. And they want to meet the students and see what they're like before they invest in that new hire, before they invest in our graduates. Now, I always say to people and to our students that even though we know that our graduates across Canada have, for the most part, for 22.8% of them, found work by answering an internet job ad, I actually fall in that category. Technically, Western posts all their jobs. When a job opening comes available, it gets posted online. Now, when I finished my master's, I had done an internship with Western. I actually originally went into my master's and switched into psychology because I thought I wanted to do marriage and family counseling. But I ended up doing an internship here at Western because there wasn't a placement through my master's program at Western to do marriage and family counseling. So I came here to Western. And I had done an internship, realized I really liked this environment and working here, and realized that I think I would like to work here for my future. So after my internship finished, I continued to volunteer while I kept 2 other part-time jobs to pay my bills because there wasn't a position available. But I wanted to continue getting experience here, continue showing them my value, and my contributions, met with the director, talked with the employees. I did so many of those other things beyond just answering that internet job ad to get the job I have today. So what does that mean for your children? What that means is that it takes a lot of effort, and they can start the process of networking, getting referrals, meeting employers in year one. They don't have to wait till they graduate. I often recommend that they start in year one. So from that same survey, in 2005 is actually the most recent published data, that the class of 2005 that we have. But from that same class, of the individuals who were employed full-time, this was the salary, the median annual salary. So $45,000 for a bachelor's graduate, $60,000 for master's, and $65,000 for doctorate. Of that same class again, 42% of them went on to pursue more education beyond that bachelor's degree. So this number is probably over that 50% mark now. There's a 50-50 chance that your child will go on to pursue something beyond their bachelor's degree. And I always say, if you're smart like my parents, you'll say, well, we'll help you out with your bachelor's, but everything else you need to take care of. Okay, so that's it for numbers, and then this is the last slide for this section. And it's a nice lavish picture of, I'm not too sure what it is, a house, a castle. But the reason I show you this is because I think there's one really important thing that parents can do to support their children, given the information that I just provided you with. And that is that you can help to set some realistic expectations. Realistic expectations based on there's more careers than they may have set their eyes on. There are 2 million job titles in Canada. And if they're working with only the careers they know, then maybe they want to broaden their scope. Maybe they want to consider more possibilities beyond what they know today. Setting realistic expectations in terms of the effort in which it takes to find employment. That spending all of your time behind a computer to even find a summer job or part-time job while at university isn't an effective way to find a job today. That a lot more effort goes into the job search. And being realistic about how much money they're going to make in that first job or after graduation. I meet with a lot of students who, when I ask them and we talk about values and this idea of money, a lot of them say, well, I want to live exactly how I'm living right now. So the lifestyle that you're affording them today is how they want to continue living after they graduate. Now, if you look back 20 years, were you living the same lifestyle you are living today? Maybe not. Maybe if you were starting out your career, it was a little bit different. So a lot of students think it's realistic to think, I'm going to be making 6 figures out of graduation. And that might be true down the road in their career, but not necessarily right after graduation. So having these conversations are really important, and it's not the student's fault that they just don't know. And so I think having these conversations is really helpful for them when they're planning and thinking about their future career. Okay, so then how do you plan for a career in today's economy and this idea of the global economy? How do you actually help your son or daughter plan for a career? Well, a lot of people, the next step is, well, okay, so what is your degree? And what career can you get with the degree you have? And that's probably the most popular question students ask and search on our website. And the reality is that there's actually not a simple answer to this. What can you do with a degree in? Yeah, there are careers that a student with a degree in history might be more likely to pursue than a student with a degree in biology. But as we saw from the first slide in the statistics there, only 20% of careers are regulated or jobs are regulated. So for about 20% of jobs, we can answer this question. So if there isn't a particular path in terms of what degree you have and what career you end up in for 80% of the jobs out there, why isn't there a simple answer? And so I often like to think about, well, okay, who's doing the hiring then? The employers. Well, what are they looking for? The Conference Board of Canada, essentially, one thing they did was they surveyed employers across Canada, asking them what they were looking for in new hires. And their wish list, skills. They're looking for fundamental skills like communication, problem solving, critical thinking, personal management skills like being adaptable, being able to continuously learn, and teamwork skills, being able to work with others and participate in projects and tasks. At the end of the day, if you have an 85 average or a 75 average, you still get the same degree. And only a handful of employers will ask for a transcript before they hire you. A very small handful. I can probably count how many on my hands. So why are they looking for skills? Well, I like to use a baking analogy to help clarify this, and hopefully it will make sense to you. So before you bake anything or pick up a recipe, you have to know the basics of cooking or baking. You have to know how to use measuring cups and spoons in your oven and be able to read all the directions of what they tell you to do in the recipe. Once you have all those things under your belt, then you can be given, for the most part, any recipe and probably make it with some success. Well, in today's economy, I mean, you sitting here today, like I said, you're probably not doing the same job every single day. Jobs evolve very quickly, and the career in which your son or daughter will enter won't be the same today as it will be 20 years from now. Our economy is always changing. And so employers are looking for skills. They're like the fundamental elements of baking. If a new employee has the skill sets that an employer is looking for or that align with the organization, then they can be put on different project teams, be given different tasks, and with the skill set that they have, succeed in that environment and in today's global economy. So then, if there isn't a direct link to degree and occupation, and we live in this global economy, well, how do you plan for a career? And essentially, there's 4 main things that we need to consider and that your children can consider. Skills, interests, values, and personal style or personality. So what skills do they have? What skills are they willing to learn? What are their interests? Sometimes I say to a student, if you had to walk into a Chapters bookstore right now, what section of the bookstore would you be going to? What's the first thing you do at the end of the day when you go home? What are the values that they have? And this one is a bit harder for students. Sometimes they often go back and take on the values of their parents. Sometimes it takes a couple of years in the job market or in the world of work to really identify your value set. And personal style, what's their personality, what comes naturally to them? And as we saw from the video of alumni, for each of them, there was a different reason that they pursued the path they pursued. For some of them, they recognized that they had a skill set that they wanted to use. For others, it was they identified a strong interest, and they wanted to pursue that interest. We saw with Lucas, one of the gentlemen, it was a strong value set that he had recognized. He had done the alternative spring break trip, working with Habitat for Humanity, and recognized that helping others in a global capacity was something that was really important to him that he didn't know before. And so for him, that's what's guiding him down the career path he has taken. And for others, it might just be personality. You know, I know this about myself, this feels good, this feels natural, and I want to use the strength of who I am and my personality. when you identified these things, you can then start trying on careers, as we saw again in the video. Someone said, you know, I took a part-time job at Sport Western and recognized that I liked working in a recreational setting. And that's what then helped her guide herself down the career path she chose. I always say that my math skills are at the periphery of that skills bubble. It's something I'm good at, but doesn't align with anything else for me in terms of careers. Now, when I say trying on careers, I don't mean that your children have to be an accountant for a day or be a teacher for a day to figure out if they want that as their ultimate career. But what this means is that through involvement and through life experiences, you can start thinking about these things and recognizing these things, and then look at overlap and where that overlap is. So any experience can be a valuable experience. That's the key message here. Every single alumni from the video, it was through an experience they had, whether it was inside the classroom or outside the classroom, that ultimately helped them figure out what it was they wanted to do. And your children came to probably the best university they could have, because Western is known to be the best student experience. I mean, we've been ranked top every year for I don't know how long. And what that really means is that there's so many ways for your children to get involved and gain experiences that will allow them to start trying on careers and figure out what they're good at, what they're interested in, what values they have, and what feels and fits with their personality. If your son or daughter thinks that they want to be an X, well, let's say a teacher, and they couldn't tell you what a teacher might do on a day-to-day basis in a real sense, then I would say they're not ready to pursue that as a career. If we look at Kelly from the video, the one that went to teachers college and realized she didn't want to actually be a teacher, she went to teachers college because she didn't know what else she wanted to do, and she thought, well, I might as well be a teacher. And for her, she wished that she had spent more time really recognizing what a teacher does on a day-to-day basis, so that she didn't invest all that time and energy pursuing something that she really didn't want to do. So why do we look at personality, skills, values, and interests? Well, we live in a country that encourages us, and we have, in this generation of students, have parents that are probably encouraging them to pursue a career that will ultimately make them happy. I think that's what most of us want for ourselves, and I'm sure you want for your children, is for them to pursue a career that makes them happy. And I see this as a bit of a luxury. I've done quite a bit of traveling myself, and I feel really fortunate to be able to have chosen a career that makes me happy. But in today's global economy, it's almost becoming a necessity that new graduates and employees are finding the right career path. And this is the main reason why. Employers have recognized that happy employees, so employees where it's a good match, or they enjoy the work that they're doing, or it's a good fit with the organization, or happy for whatever reason, they actually contribute to organizational output in a positive way. So let's say that 40% of employees are really happy in their given employment. They're actually contributing to more than 40% of that organization's output. So it's a net benefit for an employer to hire somebody that has a sense of, it's the right career path for me. It doesn't have to be the exact right fit right out of the gate. I mean, we look at the alumni from that video, most of them have had at least 2 jobs, and they've only been out of university for 2 to 5 years. Some of them are even on a 3rd job. But you navigate through as you get into the job market and start figuring out, what am I interested in, what am I good at, and that helps you down your path. And so as students, your son or daughter can start thinking about those 4 pillars while they're in university so that their likelihood of being successful in today's global economy and the job market is much higher. So I went to a conference about 2 years ago. It was a careerist conference, and the keynote speaker was an economist. And he was talking about this idea of the global economy and how the North American job market has drastically changed over the past few years, and what the future looks like from an economist standpoint. And this is what he had to say when somebody in the audience raised their hand and said, well, I work with students all day long. If you're telling me that we can't predict the future and that we live in this really competitive global economy, what do we tell our students then? What do we tell new graduates? And he said, once you needed to show no particular interest in your work, only a willingness to work hard for your pay. Now you must show genuine interest in your work, and tomorrow you will have to demonstrate passion. And I thought it was really interesting that he says this, based on that previous slide and all the research that's going on about happiness today. It's actually a really popular research topic. And sometimes this idea of following your passion and doing something you're passionate about can, I don't know, some people say that's a little fluffy, or some people think, well, that's kind of scary. What if you don't know what you're passionate about? Am I not going to be successful if I don't know what I'm passionate about? And how I would answer that is, well, standing here today in front of you, to be honest, I'm really not too sure what I'm passionate about. Not at all. But what I do know is that I'm doing a job that really interests me. I'm doing a job that uses my skills and helps me develop new skills. I'm working for an organization that aligns with my values. One of my best friends switched from science into accounting, and I left accounting. She makes double what I make today, but she's not any happier than I am today. And I'm in a job that fits with my personality. I go home feeling energized and excited to come back to work each and every day. So I would argue that although I don't know what my passion is, I'm pretty close to finding it. And maybe I never will, but if your children, if your son or daughter thinks about those 4 pillars and tries to plan a career based on those things, I would say that they're probably pretty close to pursuing their passion and are going to be successful in the global economy in which we live today. So as parents then, what can you do? What are some main takeaways? You can encourage your students to explore courses and careers that align with those 4 things, those 4 pillars that I talked about, and that interest them. And when your son or daughter is in a course that they're interested in and invested in, they're going to be more likely to develop the skill set that employers are looking for. So I mentioned that when I was doing my accounting courses, I hated them. I wasn't reading my textbook. I didn't care to go to class. I definitely wasn't spending a lot of time on my assignments. And when I came to university, I based my course selection, well, first on the prerequisites of my program, but second on the courses that you didn't have to write an essay. That was my main criteria for courses. I do not want to write essays. Well, let me tell you, you can't do an honor specialization in psychology without writing a lot of essays. And I quickly learned that once I became interested in the subject matter, that my essay skills got really, really good. My research skills got really, really good, and my presentation skills got a lot stronger because I was excited and interested in the information that I was delivering. So if your child is interested in the subject matter in which they're in, they'll develop those skills that employers are looking for. And just because they're in a degree or in a program that you may not think, oh, that's a direct lead to a specific job, that's okay, because we know that for 80% of jobs, there isn't a specific path. Encourage them to get involved in as many ways possible so that they can start trying on careers and get involved inside the classroom and outside the classroom. There's many, many ways to learn about yourself. Have them consider things like internships, co-ops, job shadowing, meeting employers directly, so that they can learn about some of the actual jobs that exist and get some experience in an interest area. If you have a son or daughter interested in the marketing industry or the finance world, encourage them to talk to people and meet people in that industry so that they can learn more about it, and that will help them try on careers and figure out, ooh, what that person's doing, I could really see myself doing that. Or they seem to know of some other jobs that exist that those ones might interest me too. So have them take advantage of networking opportunities. And we offer tons and tons of ways for students to get involved here at Western and network at Western, but you also have a huge network. Family, friends, colleagues. If you know somebody that works in an industry that your son or daughter might be interested in, try to set up a meeting with them or for your child so that you can help them learn more about all the career possibilities. Help them and encourage them to be realistic based on the stats we talked about at the beginning. And encourage them to start early and get help. Every single thing I talked about today, from all the job possibilities and labor market information to identifying what your skills, interests, values, and personality, what types of careers that those things relate to. We have all of those resources here at Western to help your students in those ways with everything I talked about today. Just because you came here today, I don't expect that now it's your responsibility to help your children plan for their career and you need to know all the information. Not at all. We have all of that here at Western for them, all of the resources available to them through the Student Success Center. A typical student I see is in 4th year, panicking because they have no idea what they want to do after graduation. And they're often terrified because they have to go home and tell their parents who have often footed the bill. And that's a big concern for a student. So encourage them to start early so that they can start working at this in day 1. Now to finish off, I have the last video. We're going to go back to meet the same alumni, and they wanted to share with you some of the ways in which they felt their parents supported them throughout university. So if I interviewed their parents might have something different to say, but this is from their perspective, and they also have some advice that they'd like to share with you.